When the day begins, your thoughts are of the best intentions. How can you make this day the best it can be? You wonder, what will this day bring? Your family awaits you in the distance, coaxing you to run to them and join them in some early morning shenanigans. This is what families do. Off to the fields to dream of being an airplane pilot or an astronaut. Whatever you want to be, it's your imagination, and it can take you anywhere. Run to the lake to join everyone in a game of tag or hide and seek. Celebrate your victories, dancing around foolishly in celebration antics. Chase down your family at the beach, fling kites, feeling the ocean's breeze hit your face. Being a child is an amazing experience.
There are many children who have had this experience taken away from them by CPS. They will never feel the attachment to family the way they should. They are being robbed of life's precious experiences, and people are allowed.
As the sun sets slowly, and so many are anticipating the new day with their family, there are so many others laying there wishing that they could be with their own families. This torture needs to be stopped. These children will wake up alone and fight the world by themselves instead of surrounded by the family God gave them. We must abolish CPS and stop neglecting children who once enjoyed living with a family of their own. Studies show we are destroying these children, not helping.
In the United States, CPS makes upwards of $3 billion per day on trafficking and selling our children. The corruption may start with the caseworker, but goes through the judicial system, passing the governor through the Senate and into the White House. The entire system has a hand in the business known as CPS.
Our children are stolen every minute of a 24-hour day. They are being robbed of their innocence, their trust, their happiness. As parents, we are isolated and betrayed by a government we trust. States are balancing budgets on kids' lives. Only 12% of the kids taken will be reunified. Title IV funding is being riveted with fraud.
We need to stop CPS and abolish CPS.com is leading the way. Join us.
What's up, everybody? It is this night, Wednesday night. CPS Victims. No, Thursday night. Thursday night. That's right. Thursday night. Jesus Christ. Oh my, I don't know what just happened there. CPS Victims on Injustice. I am your host, the CPS Punisher. We got the chat room right over here. Looks like we're gonna have a lot of fun tonight. Looks like Fowler's in the house with us, so that's cool. We got the chats here. Guys, listen, if you are watching this in a replay, make sure that you leave some comments down below. Tell us where you're from. Tell us if you guys need help. Whatever you guys need, please be a part of that. That helps us grow. It helps us get on the algorithms. It does all that. Vinny, let's bring them all out. All right. Mr. Vinny and Mr. Gunner, how we doing? And Miss Fowler's in the backdrop.
Doing good.
What's going on, guys?
Just another day of kicking CPS's ass, educating people, and realizing a thing called honor and integrity that they have no clue about what it takes to stick things through and keep together. And, our testament here is today is our anniversary at the same time. Even with CPS involved, we're still together, and they can kiss our ass, and we're going to kick their ass.
Hell yeah. Ass kicking. Speaking of ass kicking, Vinny, go ahead.
Yeah, come on, Vinny.
So, as everybody knew last night, I had court today. I left this afternoon a little late. We ended up getting there 10 minutes late. My attorney was standing outside the courtroom waiting for me. He pulled me into the office and he said, "Well, I got to update you real quick. This sanction hearing has now turned into a dismissal hearing. On case in point of evidence not being given to us, over 8 months of waiting for this evidence and them denying us access to this information. Not only doing that, other things were found that should be confronted and brought to light. And eventually, when I'm able to speak on that and really come forward, it will go viral. And I will finally have my justice served, because I will, with my freedom of speech, enact my freedom of speech and put all these people out there involved and let them be known on how corrupt our government and our DAs and courtrooms really are. So, with that said, we are waiting for a decision from the judge, a written decision. He told us it could be tonight, it could be tomorrow, or it could be in 2 weeks. His face when the DA was talking just looked like he was dumbfounded, and he kept reading back through the files. So as they were talking, he was reading the files on everything and seeing everything going on. So I think he very much questioned the same thing that we're questioning. And my hopes are that he will permit the dismissal on them grounds, because there's a major violation, not on my side. And it's on theirs, and it's on their head.
Oh, yeah. Oh, fucking yeah.
And guys, we're not talking things small. We're talking about constitutional violations or federal laws or federal crimes that are happening just in this specific case with Vinny. We won't go into details, but the particulars are still the same for everybody. You can't violate the Constitution. You can't violate due process. You cannot. The whole point of the law is not one perspective. The idea is not to give one thing. The idea is to look at the whole thing and be fair and just without any feelings and base it off the law. And that's not what's happening. What we're going through is kangaroo courts. That's exactly what it is. And if you don't have the terminology and the way to fight it and the way to do things of saying, so you're coming after me while somebody else is actively committing federal felonies and you're doing nothing. Have you reported it? Have you done this? Have you done that? Or this? Or the question comes down to is, who do we report it to? because the people that have the authority to supposedly do something about this or do the just thing or the correct thing is not doing it. They're not doing their jobs. The idea is a full investigation and let the facts lead you down the case. That's what it's about, not your feelings.
And it's funny that you say that, because even in the detective's report for the warrant, for the affidavit warrant of Facebook and text messages that they supposedly had, it came back on the active report. Okay, you guys, it came back. We have found no evidence at this level.
Corruption.
No evidence.
We took and turned a blind eye to what was going on because we wanted Vinny. We think you should, or our opinion is, well, guess what? When the rubber meets the road, you're fucked. Because there's the point of why CPS should never exist. Just that simple thing. It's none of your business. No crime has been committed. Now, in other cases, hello, Tamil, that we have criminal action. Yes, they do. But as soon as those criminal cases go away, these kids were supposed to come home because that was the foundation of it. I mean, that's like, Darren's fighting a lot of that shit with him. Is my case was gone. It was dismissed. There was no facts to it. But you still got my fucking kids. Under what justification or form of justice there is, the reason you had for taking them, or the thing you brought before the court, was there was a criminal act involved, and there's
right. So what we need to do about this is, here's the thing, right? Because this is what CPS is going to come back and say. Because what they say is this: is they say that now that they've got your kid, that the original reasons that they took your kids are no longer in play. It's the actions after said, which is all bullshit. Because why aren't you using the fruit of the poisonous tree, right? Like, if they had no reason to take your kids from the onset, then there should be no reason for anything to, after the fact, take that. And this is what they hide behind, and that's what they're going to try to fight now. Oh, well, it's because of this and this, and he abandoned the kids, and he did this, even though it was all state rhetoric. It was all done by them.
Yeah.
They're the ones that create the alienation. They're the ones that drive that 6-month thing in.
So I'm being held guilty for your actions that caused this particular case for this to happen. That you're accusing me that I have now done that, are crimes, when you're the instigator or the creator of that particular problem, or law enforcement or the state government has caused, these representatives in the judicial branch, such as DAs and so on and so forth. You failed to do your job before acting. You shouldn't have acted. This is why being so overactive or so prevent or you'll hear the term, we'll err on the side of caution. That should never exist. There shouldn't be an error. You're not there to do that. If there's something needs to be protected, that's a criminal case. Well, we feel that your opinion don't fucking matter in this thing. That's called my constitutional rights. And like what you were talking about in that video, the one thing you're taking away from these things that everybody's missing is the very core of the Constitution. Is the pursuit of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I can't do that with an organization like CPS watching over my shoulder telling me what's good or bad for my children, because it's none of your fucking business. Why? Because it's my belief system under the First Amendment, under my religious beliefs or my core belief system. You cannot, and unless you can show me there's a criminal that makes that a criminal act, fuck off.
Yeah, that's it.
Did you know that term transcends in every single language across this country? In English, it's the one term that everybody in every country understands is fuck off.
Yeah, they all know about that.
But that is a statistical fact. So those are based on facts. That is one term in the English language that is understood across every other language is fuck off, and they know exactly what it means.
Yeah, I mean, they made a thing about it.
It's a good Irish way of doing things, don't you think, lad?
Yeah, it's yes, it's here you go, Gunner. Let me see here. I'm gonna do this just for you. We're gonna have a little thing here. Hold on a minute, Gunner. Just for you, buddy.
Come on, bring it.
One of the most interesting words in the English language today is the word fuck. Out of all of the English words that begin with the letter F, Fuck is the only word that is referred to as the F word. It's the one magical word. Just by its sound can describe pain, pleasure, hate, and love. Fuck, as most words in the English language, is derived from German, the word frichen, which means to strike. In English, fuck falls into many grammatical categories. As a transitive verb, for instance, John fucked Shirley. As an intransitive verb, Shirley fucks. Its meaning's not always sexual.
He just lost power. Are you son of a biscuit? Man. You just lost
I'm just
power,
saying.
man. I lost the video.
I'm just saying. Have you pissed anybody else off today?
Sorry, guys. I lost
I know, I sure as hell have.
Oh, they hate that we talk, Vinny. I'll bet you every bit of it. And here's the thing. I almost guarantee you, without even knowing, both of your attorneys, everything you're doing, they're wondering where you came up with half of this perspective and everything else that you're going on. Because otherwise, they would have just fallen along with the company line with everything till all of a sudden you have an educated person says, I don't know everything else besides it, but I'm at least educated enough. You need to file this and understand your attorney's work for you to where even if your attorney says, I ain't going to file that, it's your job. I pay you. File it.
Yep.
Now, Sharon has a degree in psychology and early childhood development, but now you're telling me that's the same thing that most of these caseworkers have. But the big thing is none of them have kids, and to discount the fact of the psychology of it, but no real world experience, such as you don't have children. How do you know how children react? How do you know that they don't lie, cheat, steal? They're developed. Well, I read about it. Let me tell you something. A man with an experience is never at the mercy of a person with an argument.
No.
Unless they're in court. So psychological manipulation. She can go through some of the steps of psychological manipulation that they use just for entry.
Just for entry?
Just for entry, the Fourth Amendment violation. How do they coerce their way in? What are some of the tactics you've seen, heard of? Understand, she's been down rabbit holes and talking to other people too. Yeah. Oh, we all talking.
So, trying to think back. They'll use a few different tactics depending on what they're met with. I mean, if you kind of meet them friendly, they'll just kind of wheedle their way in. If you kind of meet them and come at them more aggressively, they'll fight back more aggressively. They will threaten law enforcement. They will
taking your kids.
They will threaten taking your kids regardless.
Probably. You don't comply, we're going to take your kids. We'll get a judge to sign off it. That's what she was told.
Yeah. In our case, the caseworker used a distracted moment as I was handling a child behind me to step in. By the time they're already in, you kind of feel like you don't have a choice at that point. So, I mean, they'll use different tactics depending on what they're met with at the door. So
now that's your federal and state tax money that is paying for that training to do that, people. That's where it should shock every American out there. They're using your money to train people to violate your constitutional rights. And we have all the evidence for it in all 50 states.
Their favorite phrase is, we're here to protect the children. We're here to check on your child. We're here to make sure that everything is okay, that your child is safe. And they will repeat it on replay over and over and over again until they either get you to start believing it, or sometimes I think they say it so that they keep believing it. It's kind of the cult mindset of
cult mindset. You hear that word, guys?
You keep repeating propaganda in your mind to keep you on a level and to keep you thinking, you know, this is where I'm at. This is what I believe. So, I mean, these caseworkers truly come in believing that they're doing something good, and they will repeat it over and over and over, no matter what you throw at them. And they will repeat it to you in the hopes that you will kind of
believe it.
Yes.
kind of like some of these people in some organized religions that stand up in a position of authority and say things that are not in line with their own belief system, but it benefits them. Definition of a cult. These people are made to believe something, that go out into the public doing something, and then now you watch the same video they did, Darkness into Light. Explain this video, because a lot of parents that go through things with that subjugation are shown this video, and it's part of the training video. Now, she's seen it when she was in school.
Yeah, it was a long time ago.
And they wanted her to rewatch it.
So they will keep you jumping through hoops as long as they can, because they get funding for every single one of these programs.
Mm-hmm.
So if they sent you through their training program for child trafficking and sexual abuse, they will get money for that. If they send you to parenting classes, they will get funding for that. If they send you to therapy, there's funding for that. So the more they can keep you jumping through hoops, this is why they're so good at making up stories. They're great story weavers. They will keep making excuses as long as they can in order to keep getting that funding. Now, as far as like details of that training, I don't remember very clearly like all of the details, but
Well, describe the video so they're not have the
you-
sticker shock like they were
give
looking to
you-
get after it.
So it's the idea of they give you all the horror stories. And this is how they train their employees. They give them all of the horror stories that you could possibly, like the worst of the worst of the worst. And then they have you thinking that every case is going to be like this, and that you have to err on the side of caution so that this doesn't happen to somebody else. And
That error on the side of caution is your constitutional rights, folks.
it is. It is. So they will have you like just think of the worst case scenarios that you can possibly think of. They do this to homeschoolers all the time too. They tell us that we are keeping our children home so that
Socialization,
we can hide
neglect.
things.
Yeah.
So it's like they take the worst case scenarios, they put them into their training, and then they have these people like go through the training, and it kind of conditions them to think in worst case scenario.
Psychological manipulation. It's called psychological warfare. They do it on their own employees.
So then they go out into the field and they're already conditioned to think worst case scenario, what could possibly happen. So this is why I'm saying they believe that they're doing something good, and they're going to err on the side of caution because that's how they're trained to do it, because they don't necessarily want to see that happening. But the problem is that their training doesn't account for situations that aren't the worst case scenario.
Especially with training and the things that we've seen too. We're seeing a pattern that she's also noticing, and it's been going on for a while, is the manipulation and the ability to manipulate children that are on the spectrum. Autism scale, they are very familiar on how to manipulate those kids and do that. Why? They used to run the sanitariums, the sanctuaries. They used to know how to manipulate these kids that are autistic or this, that. They have done in-depth studies. They've had decades of practice with it when the sanitarians were there, and they wrote books on how to manipulate people. How do you think electroshock therapy came into thing? Or they were making money off of getting testing. We cut all that funding, and they ended up taking over CPS. Because it was that same one that ran that was the Department of Human Services in each of your states, and look into your sanitariums and you'll hear the horror stories.
And CPS caseworkers are not qualified to work with neurodivergent children.
Not at all, and that's bullshit if they tell you are, because they are so vast on the scale. I have a neurodivergent child. She has two. Okay. One with a medical, one it's just brain chemistry, stuff like that. My son's been diagnosed, all of it's been diagnosed, but the issue is they're not trained to deal with that. They're not psychological professionals, which is, especially in our case, they wash or threw out. If you're there for the the benefit of the child, then why did the GAL not pull the mental health records? Once again, mental health records, and it's under their duties to do so for a fair trial, and it wasn't done. But once again, why would you prevent medical records coming in or psychological records over something as silly? Ours was just the evidence not getting in, had to do with a seal. We call it the stamp, that had to go on there. The date was outdated. They just forgot to renew their thing, and their amount of leniency to renew that if they don't renew it in time. I mean, with any license, oh well, it's outdated. Doesn't mean they don't have one out. Yeah, but it's not stamped. And why would you prevent medical records or psychological records that would greatly influence the case to be submitted? And you're supposed to be doing this as a GAL for the benefit of the child. You're doing it for the benefit of the people who approved it.
They absolutely do manipulate children. In fact, the very tactics that people say groomers use, they use in their program.
Every bit of it.
My kids were given gifts. Kids are given gifts for talking to people. They're given gifts for going to therapy. They're encouraged for all these things. I mean, like literally, like I turned around and said to Gunner the one day, I was like, I can't believe they're sitting here accusing us of these things when they're doing the same damn thing.
Rumor stuff. The child was already in mental health classes or mental health. When they did that, move them away from the private into a government-funded or government subcontractor for the state as a nonprofit COC, your CAC centers. They're making money, and it's the government shoving money at it one particular nonprofit business. I'm sorry, that's illegal. It's supposed to be open. That's called a monopoly. CAC centers have a monopoly on that thing, and that is illegal in this country. Why is that not regulated?
So I do have a degree in psychology, so I do see some of these things as we go through. Our caseworker also had the same degree, and also I think he had a master's in education.
And you were a homeschooler, and they hated that.
My kids for over
unschooling
10 years, unschool, whatever you want to call it. So arguably, I've been working with kids like my entire life. Like arguably, our education and experiences were pretty parallel, but mine were completely not and ignored and didn't account. Like they didn't count it as anything really.
They threw out, basically they took, and it was discrimination because she held the same degree as somebody else. Her word of authority with that education and that experience should have held as much weight in a courtroom as any professional in there, and it wasn't. So that's telling you the courts do not recognize certain degrees, nor do they acknowledge them because you don't work for the state. That's called discrimination. So keep that in mind there when we write that up, because that's going to be part of it.
Well, I was
There you go.
a case without my knowledge. So.
There's the other thing. Yeah, they threw that, oh, you're not going to be a defendant. It's all about this. When we come to court, her name was on the dockets the same way as she was somebody this. And it's like, what? That don't... Nothing none of it made any legal sense whatsoever, let alone I could see a thing of separation. But if there's no criminal act, why are you even involved in my family, or why are you here? Because according to your own origination documents, you're supposed to be there to offer aid, not take over and manipulate and control. And that's where they have overdone with their power and overstepped, because the state has weaponized them. You don't believe me? It's called you've got the child abuse hotline. So somebody can report something and it will trigger an investigation, but with no consequences in most states for calling in that anonymous call. Those people should be punished. If there's no foundation for it, you should be punished.
So their therapists are also kind of a joke. So my children were in therapy for specific reasons. I had them in for specific reasons. And they were related to their neurodivergency and their previous trauma. And when they moved to the therapist that was required.
Not required, they strongly recommended, but if you didn't, then they were going to come in and remove your kids, is exactly what they said.
Yeah, basically. So that therapist would not address anything that I needed addressed. They would only address what CPS referred for. And so it was kind of pointless.
Yeah.
Like there's no point in it.
And at the end of
funding.
what was it, a year and a half dealing with those people, the biggest conclusion was that they came up with during that, especially with something such traumatic, that she's just not ready to deal with it.
Oh yeah.
Are you serious? There's no signs of anything. You're just, and that's why it's psychology is such a soft science.
It can be very subjective.
it can be very subjective to anything, but that's why the hard evidence should be required in every case. You got to have something to back it up other than a hearsay comment. And that's where it's bullshit and unconstitutional. Every bit of it.
Yeah. So those are just some of the things that I noticed having gone through some, definitely the way they operate.
Ooh.
So.
You know what that is? That's a bicentennial mason jar from it's dated 1776, but this one was done in 1976. Yeah, I'm old. I really don't care.
So off topic.
That's the whole point of the show. Break it up a little bit just to break up the monotony.
That's right. Can't always be all
here. That just proves it. That's old school. We got shit that's been around a long ass time, 50 years or more.
There we go. So, Fowler, are you on the air here with us?
She's here, I think. Hold on. There she is.
Yes,
hi.
Homeschool kids learn more. Let me cover.
I'm here.
How you doing, Fowler?
Went through therapy.
Hi.
So Fowler wanted to talk a little bit more about the class action talk like we were speaking of yesterday.
Okay.
Yes, I cannot accept no for an answer. We're going to have to do it.
Here's the thing with the class action. One, it does require an attorney.
What does Dr. Fowler said about the class action?
No.
What was she saying? I didn't hear her.
Because they keep... I do not accept no as an answer. Well, we can do whatever we want to do. I live by the principle of self-determination. Let's just do it. It doesn't have to be done the way somebody else did it. It doesn't have to be done according to the rules, because we've done everything according to the rules, and now our kids are taken away from us. We have to establish the new rules. We are the nation.
And the only way that you're going to do that is by changing case law. And you have to do small steps. If you're going to do a class action, you need to have a precedenting case to walk in with a class action to say, this has already been taken care of. We already have rulings on this, and now we're just going to enforce it on a larger scale. And the only people that benefit from class action lawsuits, when it comes down to it, is going to be the attorneys that collect the fees, let alone
we don't deal, pardon me for talking over you. Never mind attorneys. I never want to have to work with another attorney unless it's a person like us. We don't need an attorney.
Okay.
I filed a writ of mandamus. I'm not an attorney.
Okay, I understand that. But
right, and I didn't go by the limitations. I do not accept the limitations. I didn't go by the limitations that people put on me.
Well, class action suit has many working parts, and the reason why they want it handled by an attorney or a firm is because of the massive moving parts. With a class action suit, you're talking about trying to sue at the same time within the parameters of a certain amount of time within the court dates to actually build your case, to do discovery, have your initial complaint, and go through everything. But the amount of people that's on the other side for that class action you would have to include into it would be, you're talking hundreds of people. So now you're looking to summarize it or generalize it, unless you have something that basically comes through of saying, we have a bunch of people that did this, this, and that. Well, if you're going to do that, well, then why don't you vote somebody in there to take and remove somebody and remove these people? Because governors have the ability to remove judges in their state things if they realize it. The governor is...
Pardon me for interrupting you. None of us, to my knowledge, has a governor that's removed anybody. We don't have that.
That's exactly my point.
Okay, so meanwhile, our kids are gone.
So why didn't you use your Second Amendment and defend your home from them taking your kids if you knew the
Okay, what about a Second Amendment? I was at the hospital and I was terrorized by a social worker who snatched my granddaughter.
Okay. So
okay,
so state law that has to deal with grandparents' rights. There's some states that don't have grandparents' rights, and it's
okay, my state has grandparents' rights. I had custody, not just grandparents' rights. My granddaughter is gone.
Okay.
Hey, Dr. Fowler, would you tell them?
Here we
Dr.
go. Hold
Fowler,
on.
would you tell
We're
them?
gonna do this. We're gonna do this, guys. Watch. We're gonna learn about class action lawsuits.
Here we are talking in this video about class action lawsuits. Okay, everybody's heard about the class action lawsuit. Some people like them, some people hate them. We're going to talk about them in a general overview, the nuts and bolts, kind of more than the average person knows kind of thing. So without further ado, let's get on into it here. All right, so this is general legal information only and not legal advice. We are talking about the class action lawsuit. This is all about a lawsuit that's filed by a representative on behalf of a large number of people, okay? So this is what we call the strength of power in numbers, okay? The power in numbers. So the more people you have, and usually this arises, you have something, let's just take an example, you have a some sort of consumer fraud. Let's say it has to deal with a car dealership or something, and everybody was defrauded somehow, or there was unfair, misleading representation, what we call consumer class action, consumer law. And, you know, it has affected, you know, tens of thousands of people on up to, you know, 500,000 people or more. I'll give you an example. My wife, there was a problem with the car that she bought. She got a notice in the mail that says, hey, you're part of a class action. So that's usually how they go. But let's talk about it a little bit more. Essentially, I'll go through the elements in a second, but let's start with just kind of the most common types of class actions that you see. Number one is that, like I said, that consumer fraud, the consumer class action. False and misleading advertisements, defective products, you know, lemon law stuff that affects a lot of people, or violation of some consumer protection laws, okay? So that is probably the most common everybody hears about, consumer class action. So that's what they're talking about. You also have employment law. You know, here's one of the stats I read, and, you know, you take it with a grain of salt. And do your own research. But I read somewhere in California, one of the states that I'm licensed in, they talked about almost half or a little over half of the lawsuits actually being employment related. So you new bar graduates, you're going, well, what area of law do I get in? Well, employment law is huge. And then think about it. There's something, what, 30, 35, 40 million people. How many people are employees? So that's a lot of different employment types of class action. You can have unpaid wages, minimum wage issues. You can have things involved, you know, you were not getting paid your vacation time or getting the proper leave, those kinds of things. Another popular thing is misclassification of independent contractors. This was an issue that popped up in real estate law, where a lot of real estate agents, you know, everybody assumes that they're independent contractors, namely because they sign a contract that says you're an independent contractor. But misclassification of them, if they happen to be, if you control the duties of the work and they happen to be employees, then you may not have been paying them properly. So just paying commissions may not have been good enough. And there was a couple cases in California, I didn't track them to conclusion, but it dealt with misclassification of independent contractors. That's another type of employment case, could be a class action. You have a real estate firm with 1,000 agents, you know, now you're talking class action. You could have different things, missed meals and breaks, not getting your breaks and meals, and employment discrimination, you know, race, age, gender, those kinds of things. Securities frauds, another one, investors who lose money due to false statements of a stockbroker or investment bank. Environmental catastrophes, I would call them, toxic torts, things where you have oil spills and water contamination or toxic chemicals released by a local factory, things that may go downstream or affect property owners and people and health, all kinds of things like that. So that can be another form of class action where there's a lot of people injured. Antitrust, this is another one that's essentially like price fixing, you know, where consumers go, well, you know, we ended up paying more for this product because the three big giants in the industry, you know who they are in every industry, they're getting together with what we learned in law school, a wink and a nod at a cocktail party going, yeah, wink and a nod. Yeah, we know what's going on. Let's get those prices up there a little bit. Then we all do better. So that's another possibility. Antitrust. Other possibilities for class actions, privacy and data breaches, anything that's dealing with personal information, putting your personal information at risk, and privacy being like the Fair Credit Reporting Act. You know, didn't we have the big data breach against, was it Equifax, I believe? Don't quote me. No, but I think it was Equifax, one of the big three credit bureaus. There's three credit bureaus, Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion, in case you didn't know. But if you have a data breach and it's affecting, you know, thousands, if not millions of people, you could see a class action in that area. Civil rights is another one. And here's a newcomer in town. It's an old comer, but it's a new twist on an old comer. Americans with Disabilities Acts. Now, this is designed to provide, you know, people with disabilities essentially access to the marketplace and give them, you know, the ability to function in daily life like everybody else gets to. So, but the new one is the flavor of the day, I would call it, is website accessibility. So we're hearing more and more about these. This is where a website is not your website, your company website, let's say, is not properly accessible to those with handicaps, vision problems, or hearing problems, those kinds of things. So this is affecting companies that have retail stores and a website. And there's no telling how far this is going to be stretched. This could be, you know, over the years every website has to become what we call ADA compliant. So that could be a whole new area for new young attorneys looking for that new niche practice area. And Attorney Steve giving you the ideas here, as always. So, but those are some of your popular categories for class actions. Now let's talk about, and by the way, a fun fact, this is Attorney Steve fun fact. Do you know what year the first class action was used? Anyone? Bueller?
If you have a 700 plus credit score, you qualify for Chase's new program where you could access up to 100.
Bueller, voodoo, no. First used in 1909, according to the Webster's Law Dictionary, 1909. So this has been around, over, I guess that's over 100 years, isn't it? So the class action's been around a while. In California, the code section is CCP, stands for California Code of Civil Procedure. Section 382 is going to give you all the nitty-gritty details, but we're going to talk today about the federal rule, Federal Rule 23, FRCP, Federal Rules of Civil Procedure, Rule 23, class actions in federal court. Now, they're going to be fairly similar, but I'm going over the FRCP version, okay? So if you're going to bring a claim in federal court, of course you're going to follow the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure, and that's Rule 23. Now, this is essentially a class action. Once again, it's a lawsuit filed on behalf of a group of people that are all similarly situated. Similarly situated is the key here, okay? That's kind of like for your law students, that's your equal protection test, similarly situated, popping up here. So you're basically filing a lawsuit. One law firm and a representative plaintiff will file a class action lawsuit and seek to get it certified by the federal court judge. And certify means that, okay, you've met the four elements. I'm going to certify this as a class action. And then everybody in the class gets notice, and they can either opt out or not. But let's look at the four elements. In order to get this, your complaint certified as a class action lawsuit in federal court, you need to show, I'm going to give them to you real quick, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, numerosity. 2, commonality. 3, typicality. 4, adequate representation. So for you bar students, when you're on the bar exam, they're talking about a potential class action. A big oil manufacturer spilled, the whole city was contaminated. You're going to talk about these four elements: numerosity, commonality, typicality, and adequate representation. So let's look at these in a little bit closer detail. Number 1, numerosity. This just means that you got to have a lot of people. You got to have enough people that it just doesn't make sense to bring in, you know, say 10,000 people were subject to defective tires and wasting their money on defective tires on a car. you're not going to have all those people and all their attorneys fill up a courtroom and come in for a case management conference. I mean, that's just out of control. It makes no sense. So you need to show the plaintiff, the class representative bears the burden of proof on these 4 issues. They must convince the judge that a class action is superior. It's the superior way to bring the case, because, judge, you don't want everybody suing individually. It's all the same questions of law and fact. It's the same defendant. It's the same circumstances and events. I mean, it just makes no sense to have 10,000 or 100,000 different lawsuits being filed. It's what we call judicial economy. It's a great one for you law students to get in your exam. Get it in there, judicial economy. And you don't want to, and again, that's the problem of multiple actions across different jurisdictions and all over the place, the same case. So it's an efficient way to resolve disputes where you have numerous people having the same problem. So that's numerosity. Number 2, commonality. This just means there's a common question of law and fact, single issue common to all members. So you need to show that there's something in here. Maybe it's a product defect. Maybe it's false advertising, common to all members. In copyright claims, maybe it's musicians that haven't been paid a royalty by some online music company. So commonality, that's very simple. Typicality, it's very similar, related. Claims and defenses of class members are typical. So they arise from the same event or practice of the defendant. So again, common questions, typical claims and defenses. And 4, finally, adequate representation. What does that mean? That means you need to have qualified counsel. There needs to be some guarantee that if it's 500,000 people in a class action, that this firm is going to be competent and able to vigorously represent all parties. And that's a lot. That's asking for a lot, because let's say you have 500,000 people. The phones could be ringing. You need to be able to handle the calls and inquiries, and you need to perform your lawyer-like duties, as they say. Speaking of duties, you need to make sure on a conflict of interest level, if you have 1 million consumers in a class, you need to make sure there's no conflicts of interest. The rules still apply, the ethical rules, the rules of professional responsibility, okay? So that's important to hit that. So you want to make sure that they're adequately protected, that their interests are protected, everyone can be represented. If all those 4 elements are proven, if the judge can certify it as a class action. If not, everybody is on their own. Pursue your own case if you want to. Most people don't even know they have a case until they get that letter in the mail. So once the certification is made, all members are basically part of the class. And so what happens is they all end up getting notice. If it's 200,000 people, it's going to be 200,000 notices going out. And those are the things you get in the mail. And you may get those and say, well, what do I do with this? This is it says I'm in a lawsuit, or I'm a plaintiff, a defendant. I don't even know what's going on. If you're not sure and you got a notice, give us a call. We're happy to take a look at it, see what the action is, according to time, assuming we have the time. But we're happy to, as time permits, to take a look and see what that is. But essentially, you get the notice, and you do have opt-out rights. So you may say, you know what,
we took a brand new offer from $0 to $108,000 in MRR in 90 days. This was a completely new company. The way we did it was sending 10,000 cold emails
on their own time. I think we've kind of covered.
I'm glad somebody brought that.
I think we've answered the question with that, because a class action lawsuit has got to require the capability of handling the workload of everyone involved in the case. And for you to do that as a person is impossible. That's why they want firms and things to make sure the case is handled properly. They have enough manpower and everything else, which once again, manpower means money. So yes, we can do it. And yes, you think we can do this, but you're better to hold it. And here's the reason why individual over class action wins. Because you can take your case to federal civil court. specifically name names, people, not just general institutions, but names. Once you win that case, that is now evidence in a criminal indictment. So they can take from your civil case, which you proved in civil court, take it over to the DOJ, which is why I always use the term walk across the street, is file with your from the Department of Justice. I won my civil case, and here are the criminal actions, federal crimes, and here's the evidence of it, and go out there. Now, Tatiana, I'm going to have to argue with you on. There's a comment back here. She says none of us have a winning individual case. Darren, you have the everything that I have and shared with you. Do we have a winning case, Darren?
Of course.
Yes, we do. My cousin, Dr. Fowler, has 3 grandchildren. All 3 were in the system. CPS took the grandchildren away. She was able to get one back, then she got the second one back, and she did it on her own. She got the first one back, she got the second one back, and she's working on the third. The third is the little girl, and she will proceed to get that one back.
She's the one that said we don't have a winning case.
She's saying none of us has a winning individual case for federal court. That is not true.
No, I'm not talking about any of that stuff because I'm still learning. But I'm just saying that I listened to her before and I said, no, you got to work with an attorney. You have to work with an attorney. And I kept saying, you got to do an attorney. Next thing I know, she got the second grandson back.
Well, once again, she's fighting on a state court.
And she got the second grandson back. Now she's working on the third granddaughter.
You're talking about
my AirPods. Hold on a second. I got to get my AirPods back in. Okay.
Dealing with the law.
I'm sorry.
States and codes and everything else. She's winning in her state. Yes. Federal court is a whole different beast. It is not the same. And yes, in federal court, you think you would, but there are cases, Tatiana, even now that have won in federal court, and they still have not given over their children. So that is not true. Until you can get them hooked in the point of doing things, when you do your individual case, you can then press criminal charges in a class action suit. It only changes policy, procedures, and everything else. It doesn't hold the individuals accountable. They're hoping you do a class action suit. If we all filed individual suits, we would have everything they have and terminate their jobs. And they'd have names to them. You'd have people being held accountable. With a class action, they're not going to arrest anybody. They're going to tell them to change their policies and procedures is what it does. Now you're going back and playing the game they want you to with the state in that particular thing. To affect policies and procedure doesn't mean it's going to change them, because the people are still working that we're doing the criminal activity. The point is holding them accountable for the crimes they've committed against the Constitution and against we the people on an individual basis. And furthermore, I can't name my judge, my magistrate, my GALs, the prosecuting attorney for CPS, the caseworker, and all that other stuff. You know what they get? They get a promotion, a slap on the wrist, and don't get caught, but teach everybody else how to do it and not get caught.
So generically, if the question at hand would be this: my child was illegally taken by CPS, you have now wiped anybody off the board who ever has that question again. If they say my child was not illegally taken, the court rules in the favor of the system, says no, there was not. You can never again go to the courts and ask this question, because they'll say that this has been handled in a class action system. The courts have already found that you won, so you'll never be able to try that again. No one will ever be able to go back there to individually try it with different circumstances, because the the commonality of the question would be, was my kid illegally taken by CPS? Mm-hmm. I'm just saying this is a generic way. So whatever question you were to be asked to bring to that class action suit, it's almost like being selfish, because now it's like, yeah, maybe my situation was different than yours, and I do have that. But if you bring that to a civil court, to a class action suit, once that's ruled on, that's game over. It's out of the playbook. No one can ever question it again.
And you
And
have a
that's going to be
pre-screen
there's a
process.
lot
If
of
you
big
listen
fuck
to that
yous.
video, isn't that true, Darren? That there's a pre-screen to even make it a class action. It has to be reviewed. You can't just file it. You can petition the court for a class action, but it has to still go through the judge to determine whether or not it is a class action.
Right, it's got to go into those four categories: numerosity,
Mhm.
commonality, typicality, and then the appropriate representation. It has to meet those four categories before you can even.
So if you
move
show up
forward.
by yourself to do a class action and file it and try and do it pro se, you're not even going to get that class action to go through that pre-screen process, is what we're saying. It's not going to happen. That's the way it's written. And whether you like to change that or not, you're going to get a no. And once it said no, you're turned down and you're done, is what Darren's saying. That's why you have to be strategic on how you file, what you do, and the appropriate way to do it. They're already, with the Chevron doctrine, they've had over 40 years to insulate the courts to let them get away with the crap they do. Look at Rooker versus Feldman. Right there alone is saying that they can't get federal courts can't get involved in family court matters. Family court, but if you've moved up to civil court, you have to overturn Rooker versus Feldman, ma'am. I'm sorry. It's not going to happen. It ain't going to get your kids because Rooker versus Feldman, that's the first card they'll pull out. Your Honor, federal case. This is a family law issue. Yeah, it's Rooker versus Feldman. They'll put that up there as fast as they can and say, sorry, no good. And now you're denied under just that case law. You have to get around case law. That's why understanding case law is so important on how you quote it, when you quote it, and when you put it out there. And you better know what you're talking about from that perspective, because in that summation of that court, that case law, the judge gives in their summation the reasoning behind it or their train of thought. And you can actually use even their train of thought with that case law for the thing broken in your court case. Your Honor, it's already been determined by this previous case, so-and-so versus so-and-so. It was the judges in his submissions that turned around and said, this particular thing, SEC versus Jarsky is one particular thing. An administrative judge has the ability to invoke civil penalties, requires a trial by jury. Well, a civil penalty is taking your children, and that is considered a civil court. Now you're going to challenge it under SEC versus Jarsky. I didn't have due process. That's something that will get past Rooker versus Feldman. And you can argue that in a court case. Your Honor, SEC versus Jarsky says I was supposed to have a trial by jury. That's a fundamental constitutional right of due process. I need to file under that. Now you have a leg to get past Rooker versus Feldman because you have it and you supplied enough evidence to the judge that it has happened. And it must have a sustainable argument that it must be heard. That's the pre-screen process. So unless you mean it.
And then on top of that, don't forget, if you get through all of that, every person that files in this class action lawsuit has to be served, which means that you have to pay for each individual person to be served. So you've got to go in there with a wallet. And when you're talking about doing a CPS class action suit, you're talking the potential of almost 1 billion people could be involved in this. So you imagine serving 1 billion people. You have to have money beyond belief.
But there's a loophole. We can expose that loophole. You know why? Because of me. Under the ADA, American with Disabilities Act, right there. See this? Right there. I have a heart condition. I'm supposed to be on a transplant list. Under the American with Disabilities Act protects me because I cannot physically work anymore because of my mental or my physical condition. That entitles me to have all that done for free on the court's burden because I'm disabled. I can file and have them served, and it doesn't cost me a dime. It goes on the court.
So if that's the case, I know that there are circumstances that allow the ADA does represent people that they just opened this up, that CPS, if you've had your kid taken and you've been terminated by CPS, that you now share the same rights as someone that has the mental illnesses or whatever, that someone that had their kid kidnapped or murdered. So, and that falls under the ADA. I'm not sure exactly where that is, and don't quote me exactly how that works, but there are circumstances if your kids have been taken and by CPS and you've been terminated, that you are covered under the ADA for some sort of a mental capacity, I believe is the way that they
mental or physical limiting capacity.
Mhm.
Parents, how many parents have filed? She's asking how many parents have filed a class action to demand return of their children. Several, thousands, hundreds of thousands, all the way up there. And that's why Rooker versus Feldman, they quote that case law, and it's kickback, and your case is dismissed every time because they cannot get involved in family law. Bottom line, constitutional rights, if you claim constitutional rights were violated in action of anything civil or criminal, is acceptable to get past Rooker versus Feldman. It's a constitutional rights violation. I could care less about family. We're just going to deal with the constitutional issues or federal law, jurisdictional issues. And for the state to turn around and say they have jurisdiction or the ability to do or rule on those things is illegal. As a matter of fact, that'll put that judge right in jail to say that they have the ability to do that. Yeah, the precedent's been done. You got to go overcome Rooker versus Feldman automatically. That is the first card they will play every time. And if you can't get past Rooker versus Feldman, they will kick it back. 100%, no case. 100%. Because that is the number one go-to thing on any federal case filed. The first thing they do is claim, wave the flag of Rooker versus Feldman. You can't touch us. No, I was in civil court. It escalated from family court to civil court. Now you're in a different jurisdiction. It's no longer family court. It originated there, but it doesn't mean it has to end there. Now I'm in a civil court. It's a higher court. That's where your appeal process and some of the other things go through. That's why there's an exhaustion doctrine. Darren, you want to take and cover the exhaustion doctrine?
You want to really go on that route?
Well, the point is that you've exhausted all possibilities within the state before you can even take and go into federal court. That's called the exhaustion doctrine.
Do you need that for a class action? Do you consider that in a class action? Is that part of their whole remedy? Like, I know that's partial. You need to do that when it comes to writs and things like that.
Yeah.
But do you need that for a class action? Is that part of a? Can you even move along? And I don't know that answer or that question.
You got to make those standards.
Yeah, so the same thing, like Fowler, when you did the writ of mandamus, I'm sure in there, well, I don't know, I'm not sure exactly, but I know with mine, they kicked it back because they said I have not exhausted all the avenues that can be taken in the court process, meaning that I've missed a step somewhere that along the way I didn't do a Rule 60 or I didn't do this or I didn't do something. There was something that I did not do to make it so that I was able to get, because everything in law is involving steps. You can't go to here. You can't just jump from district court to Supreme Court. You've got to go through the courts of appeals. You got to go through all of these certain steps to get to where you want to be. And if you don't follow these steps, they'll do just like Gunnar says, they'll kick it back. Unless
it's constitutional or a federal thing that they don't have jurisdiction, then you can escalate it, which is why we're telling you, you have constitutional rights violations, file on those, and they will directly think you do a change of jurisdiction due to the fact that the state courts don't have jurisdiction to answer constitutional rights violations. They don't. And for them to assume they do is also a criminal act. Trust me, we're going to expose.
However, a way around that argument is if you can match your constitutional question to your state's constitution, they do have to rule on your state's constitution in these courts. So if you can find in your state's constitution where it mimics that of the federal constitution, then you can ask those questions and they do have to rule on them. But you have to specifically state that you are going by your state's constitution and what the states are saying.
In other words, don't assume that the judge is going to do the work for you. You got to
try to find it yourself. And it has to mimic that.
Coming in there. And that's why it's so important to you guys to make sure that you're going in with loaded guns, both barrels when you're doing it, which is what we're trying to set you up for, is go in with your hard evidence. It's not about what you feel or what you think. It's what you can prove. And when you can prove it and you can come in, here's the evidence. We need to have this before a judge to make a decision. The state doesn't have the power or authority to make those decisions on federal or constitutional matters. It's out of your jurisdiction. That's why you do a change of jurisdiction. If your rights have been violated, such as entering your home without a warrant, court order, or an emergency, that is federal jurisdiction, and it directly affects your case.
Okay. So, Darren, I wanted to speak to what you were talking about when you filed your equivalent in Maine of the writ of mandamus was your Rule 60.
No. What I was saying is, they said that I did not follow. I skipped a step. I missed something along the way.
Right. But I'm saying pardon me, you filed it was a Rule 60. It wasn't a writ that you filed. Is that right?
No,
he was making it could be this or it could be that. He had
Did I just hear? I'm sorry. I just wanted to ask Darren. Did you file a Rule 60 or a writ?
No, I did the writ of mandamus. What I'm saying is they kicked it back, saying I did not follow all the steps. My only assumption is that I've skipped. There was a Rule 60 that could still be filed in my case. Everything else was exhausted. But did I exhaust Rule 60? No, I did not. So they kicked it back down.
Okay. Well, when I filed my writ of mandamus, I do believe that I well established that I had exhausted each and every other remedy. I had filed custody.
Why did they deny?
Okay, the gavel came down in my disfavor, and I don't even remember what the opinion was. It was pretty weak. Didn't have anything to do, of course, with how I established my argument. And then when I looked at who the presiding judge was, I knew it was just she was a friend of the judge in lower court. That's it. Basically.
She shouldn't have ruled on your mandamus. It has to be a court.
That's a conflict of interest.
Well, yeah, but there's nothing I can do about that. And I already knew when I filed it that there would be great potential for the gavel to go in any direction. In my case, I didn't care about which way the gavel went. In my opinion, I was going to lose if I didn't file it. I couldn't live with myself if I didn't try. I went to dozens of lawyers to get them to do it, and they wouldn't do it. So I studied and studied and studied and studied and studied, and I compiled it myself. You know why? Because now, at least when you look up Fowler versus 8 other people, which would be the judge in his capacity, the GAL in her capacity, my daughter, and the whole panel of stakeholders, it's there, and it's memorialized. And that was really important for me to let the world see what is going on, and including the pictures of my granddaughter's burns to the face, head, neck, and shoulders, and her damaged vagina from being sexually molested. Okay, and statements from the medical record. I didn't care how the gavel came down. I still don't care how the gavel comes down. I won because I did it, and I established that, and it's out there. And God knows what kind of momentum will come from that a year from now, 2 years from now, or 10 years from now. The only way you can lose is not try. The only way you can lose is just sit around and talk and cry and not take the action. Then we can't win.
And understood. And the reason that everybody took the mandamus route is because who started that run? Who started
I don't know,
the charge of mandamus? Amongst the group that we're talking about, who wrote the mandamus, who got the mandamus accepted first, and who followed suit with it?
Well, you wrote yours, and then I know I'd learned a lot.
Right. So
by being with
that, but it's not a win because we didn't win. We were heard, but they said they kicked it back. They kicked it back in our face. The idea of a writ of mandamus is to get the higher court to tell the district courts to do their fucking job. So it's not a win because they didn't do that. That's the way it's supposed to be. A mandamus is supposed to say, you guys didn't do the right thing. Now do the right thing. And it didn't happen.
You know what? I can't argue with that, but I still feel that when you file it, when you commence the action, you win. You may not win the exact action and the exact result that you want at that particular time, but every little action counts. It matters.
Okay.
It may not matter in a way that you can measure and that you can perceive right now, but it matters. It matters.
So we're talking about feelings over facts.
No, I'm not talking about my feelings. I'm talking about documenting and recording for the public purview. My feelings are absolute distress every day and night over my baby granddaughter. Those are my feelings. But every day when I wake up, I commence an action step.
No, what I'm
Action.
talking about and what Darren's going about, yes, it made you feel good to file it.
No, it did not make me feel good to file it. It was an obligation to file it. It was an action that is necessary to file it. I didn't
What
feel
was the
anything
action?
after I filed it
What was
except
the
for a relief that I filed it.
What's the
But
action
what
step
I'm
for your
saying to you,
gratitude?
look at other movements in the world. Every movement means that people commence actions that don't necessarily get you the immediate result that you want at that time, but it still matters.
I have heard the same argument come out of people that want just petitions basically to turn around and it's the same. And
Okay, well, I'm not arguing with anybody. I'm just sharing what I
Ma'am,
know works.
I'm not arguing.
I'm sitting here with, no, I'm not arguing with you guys, but I'm just sitting here telling you that in my life experience, okay, everything that I've ever done that's been successful in my life, it's because I kept acting until I got the result that I wanted.
I'm sure someone might be able to draw from your mandamus and get something out of it that makes them become victorious in achieving their child. I
But once
understand.
again, you're expecting these people to do the right thing, and they're not. There's the whole
No, I'm not telling you that. Please stop trying to interpret.
I'm not.
I'm telling you directly that what I wanted to do in filing the mandamus was to establish the facts and put them out there in the public purview. So, and especially so that if my granddaughter is able to survive, if she's able to grow up and read, when she grows up, she will see that her grandmother stood up in a federal court and her grandmother laid out the facts for the world to see. They're memorialized forever. That was my win, my voice.
Well, you were in the Supreme Court, were you not?
Mine was the Eastern District Court. It was the federal court. And to tell you the truth, I didn't even know. When I went to file it, it was in the federal court building. And I had no prior experience. But once I put it together, the filing was so easy. It was so different than anything that I filed in family court. If I practiced law, I think I might like the federal court better because it just made more sense. It was much more logical and much more businesslike.
Well, it's because it's based
But
on
it
what you
actually
know.
deals with the law. States are not dealing with law; they're dealing with code and statutes.
Right.
But this was the mandamus was filed in a federal court, and I filed the mandamus specifically to request of the federal court that the federal court direct the family court to conduct a hearing on my claim of custody and my claim of standing of custody, because the family court has denied my custody and denied me a hearing on my custody and denied my custody. That was the purpose of my mandamus.
What was the outcome of when you filed it federally, other than the fact it got on the record?
The gavel did not come down in my favor, and again, I didn't care about that. I don't care which way the gavel went, but I cared about doing it. It was important to do it.
It was a personal victory.
It may be a victory for a whole bunch of other people because it was done. Anybody in the world who also has a grievance can look at my mandamus and the diligence that I put into it and maybe feed off of that to write their own. It's not just a personal victory. It wasn't something that I'm just doing like make myself feel good. Again, it was to get this story out there into the public purview so that you or anyone can look it up. You or anyone can see these pictures of a baby being burned and medically experimented on. I had no other voice. But now that is the voice. And that's a lasting embarrassment and a stain on all of these people. Maybe not now, but in due course.
I think the point is that we're all fighting against a system that is so corrupt, it doesn't matter to them. They don't care. They can get instructions even from federal courts, and They're not even listening to the federal courts even
Right now, they're operating based on all of these immunities, but that can change, and it is going to change. And everything that we do right now is going to count. It matters. Today, I was watching a film about the voting rights and voter registration in Mississippi in the 60s. People died. Nobody stood around and said, we can't do this. It isn't going to matter. We're going to lose. People died. And now we have voter rights in Mississippi. So if all of those people who died and all of those people who tried said we can't do this because we can't fit within the rules, then we still wouldn't be able to vote.
Well, ma'am, that's why a lot of things with the sanitariums got closed down under the Reagan administration because of what was happening. But then it let them loose from the institution and buildings to contain places like CPS or that particular institution and unleash it upon the people because we cut their funding. As soon as they lost all that money from the sanitariums and the money that they were making from Big Pharma from doing those experiments like you're talking about, they were doing that in sanitariums. This is nothing new. We thought we got rid of them when we closed down the sanitariums. Didn't happen. They just changed and put on a different hat and go, now we're CPS. Congratulations. That's
No,
what it comes
what
down
I'm talking about is every little kernel of action in a movement matters. It builds momentum. We may not be able to see it cause effect. There may not be a reciprocal effect for every cause, but it still matters.
It matters.
How long does it take? Sorry?
This is why the Chevron doctrine was overturned. You're looking at 40 years worth of corruption that was done legally under the Chevron doctrine, ignoring case law, ignoring the law of saying, I'm a specialist, I'm this, I'm that, those don't pertain to me, and the court backed it up. That has just been overturned. The cause and effect of the Chevron doctrine being overturned is you have not begun to see the amount, but you're going to here real soon, of the flip of everything. That's why they're coming in to clean house. These shouldn't exist. It's illegally doing stuff. It was brought up under what? Under the even institution, three-letter institutions were developed under the thought of, now I'm a professional, I don't answer to the courts. Matter of fact, I'll abuse the courts to do what I want to do. And matter of fact, we'll give them kickback money. Why? Because it's government and state money. They don't care. So
Pardon me. Darren, you are
generations, a whole generation that has been living like this under that suppression and under that regime and under those illegal and unconstitutional laws, policies, and procedures that we've been living with for over 40 years. You have to de-integrate the American people and wake them up that what has been happening in the past 40 years is wrong. And you have to change their mind, but they're comfortable doing what they're doing. And they've been getting away with it, and they've been making a paycheck, so they don't care either.
All I know is, pardon me for interrupting you. Again, I was born in the year 1957. I was born before the Civil Rights Movement. And I remember sitting in terror in my mother's kitchen, hearing about the freedom riders and the students that were recruited to go down to Mississippi to advocate for people to be able to vote. All I know is now they can. I don't know about all these other doctrines and all that other stuff, but I know that a lot of people were determined to overturn the Klan rule of the Reconstruction era. And a lot of people that had no personal investiture put their lives, their finances, their families, their careers on the line so that everybody could vote. And now we can. That's what I know. And that's what I believe with this movement too, with our children. If we sit around and cry and grieve, which of course we grieve. I've been grieving for 3 years. Darren knows that. We've been together for 3 years. We have to grieve, but we also have to act. And we can't necessarily expect a miracle with this action or that action, but collectively they matter.
no one's discounting the fact that they don't matter. It's the amount of impact that each one will take. A class action is a personal case. It's just the amount of correction that we're going to have to make with that. That's been the point. None of this has been legal. None of this has been constitutional.
Yes, but if we wouldn't have voters' rights if all people did was just sit around and talk about the limitations. They exceeded the limitations because they had a goal.
Well, one, you assume that none of us that are here are doing anything. I can guarantee you there's a lot.
I'm not assuming that they're not, because I don't know what you've done. I know a lot of things that Darren has done, and I know a lot of the things that I've done. And like my cousin pointed out, I've won before. I've won 2 other children back from CPS just by being doggedly determined and never listening to the word no.
I'm sorry. What exactly, like, are you asking a question? Is this like your call to battle? I would like a little bit of clarification if you don't mind. It seems like
Sure. What I would like to see us do is to exceed the patented limitations and the things that people tell you you can't do when you need a lawyer, you need all this other stuff, and do it and file to collectively. There's 20 of us, there's 30 of us. I don't know how many there are. Remember the young lady Jamie and other people that are still out there that may still be grieving, to get together, write something, and demand something collectively.
I see what you're saying. So not a single person here is not fighting. Everybody is, we're all trying to figure it out together because there isn't a precedent for any of this yet.
No.
So I think we're all working towards the same goal, so to speak.
Yes. And without you all, and without this group, and without the parents that all started from going back to Vincent Davis, I wouldn't have the strength that I have today. I didn't know what a mandamus was. I didn't know what the writ system was. I didn't totally understand that the Moors, to the King of Morocco, established this system that we have. I didn't know any of that before now.
I admire you for your courage and your fighting, and I think you're doing a great job. I think that currently there are limitations, and the idea in conversing and talking together and doing these things is to figure out how to get over those limitations or around them. But perhaps collectively might not be the best option. It is possibly an option, but it may not be the best option as of yet. And I think that's what
I don't agree with the class action suit. I don't agree with the class action.
Yeah. So that's what they're trying to explain to you, is that currently with the current system, the way it is and the limitations that it does have, that a class action is not the most effective way to go about getting to our goal. And I do believe that we all have the same goal. We all want to see the babies come home. Every single one of us. There's not a single one of us here that doesn't.
We don't want just disciplinary action of these people that have been doing this, is what a class action will do. We want them held accountable for criminal offenses. And the only way to do that is by individually filing. And if multiple, you're right, but having our voices come together, of all of us filing similar cases with constitutional rights violations and going after them and having understanding what fruit from a poisonous tree is, of stuff like that, is trying to get people out there. Listen, if they entered your home illegally and not according to the Constitution, fruit from a poisonous tree means there's no case. They can't proceed because they committed a felony to obtain that evidence or even move forward. It's all thrown out.
So what we're trying
here, but I understand that we're all doing things individually, but which one of us has been able to get our children back by the things that we're doing individually?
Now, some families have. There have been case laws, but let me explain something. Those people that do figure this out, they can't talk to you. Why? Because they have a non-disclosure agreement with their settlement. For them not to go to court, the state realized that they screwed up and did that, paid them a big fat check. And those are quiet cases usually. They're not really publicized. But there are people that win their cases and win lawsuits in court and everything else for it. And sometimes it doesn't even go into court. Let me tell you how this happens. You file, Then you go for discovery. Everybody looks at everything, and then they're going to force you into mediation to see whether or not you can negotiate a settlement outside of the court, and the judge will just sign off on it. That's where they pop in. We'll give you this money, but you can never talk about this case, what you found out, what evidence you have, anything in this case, you can never talk about again. Otherwise, we can come back and wipe you out financially. It's a contract, is what it is. And they will hold you to that contract law 100%. So yes, there is people that have won, that have held them accountable, had people removed, had people arrested, and all this other stuff is part of their agreement. But that's as far as they go, because they realize the evidence that they found could affect every other caseworker or any other CPS throughout their whole state and shut them down. That's what they fear. And people have taken buyouts because they just want to be done, because they're psychologically broken and worn down, because that's what they want you to do, and beat you psychologically to say, are you done fighting? Otherwise, we can tie you up in court for the next 2 or 3 things. Not if I file this particular thing over in federal court to expedite it and everything else for certain reasons. You can't. And if you drag it along, the judge will sanction you. That's a federal court. Federal courts don't like state people because they go off of things. Because they once again, that's little brother going into big brother saying we screwed up. They don't like that. It's a big black eye for them when they're drug into federal court. They don't like it. That's where we're at in the reality. Conceptually, it would be great for all of us to come together, file one big thing of how it needs to stop, and it stops.
Put it up, Vinny. Put up the graphic.
But it doesn't. It doesn't. That's not the way.
Okay, well, here's a question for anyone. What has anyone here filed that's gotten their children back individually?
As far as what's here in these groups, nobody has. People
Right.
It's a process.
So what's
Right,
that
my
tell you?
point.
What's that tell you?
What is that?
The
Yes, what,
specifics of your case are different than anything else. Why would you let, and not if it's that serious, why don't you take every single one of these people and hold them accountable and press criminal charges on them rather than a class action that just changes policy and procedure and allows these people to continue to deal with children? Because
okay, that answer is real simple. They're immune. The minute my granddaughter was stolen from my arms, I ran to Lower Merion Police and tried to file a complaint. Can't do it.
That's because
I've been to the district attorney's office. They wouldn't take a complaint. Can't do it. I've been to the special victims unit. Is somebody talking over me? I've been to the district to the special victims unit. They would not take a complaint.
No,
I've been back to the district attorney's office. They would not take a complaint. I went to Philadelphia Police. They would not take a complaint. I went back and I went back and I went back, and finally they did take a complaint because I'm very determined. The 39th Police District did take a complaint, but the complaint has to be channeled through DHS. Okay, so you're asking me why didn't I do this? There is nothing under the sun that I did not do.
Okay, was there any constitutional rights violations that were involved in it? Because that will get you past Rooker versus Feldman.
Okay, everything what you're telling me right now is abstract, because if you can't get a criminal complaint in, then you can't do what you just said. They won't accept a criminal complaint because of this immunity.
Nope. If you can prove in a court of law that constitutional rights violations happen, that is one thing to get you past the immunity they have. That's already federal.
Okay, well, how do we get to that? Because, again,
once again, you can.
All right, if it isn't through the writ system, then how do you get to court to file a criminal complaint against these people? If that was possible, that's what we would all be doing.
Let me explain to you how we do this. We've just gone through. It's a newer discovery that we've had. Darren and I have hashed this out. If you have an open case, you file for a change of jurisdiction. Why? Because the lower court doesn't have jurisdiction over federal issues or constitutional issues. They can't even rule on it.
Okay, you file in Pennsylvania. You file for a change of jurisdiction where?
Well,
you file in what court? In what court?
By the lower court.
So what is the filing in a federal court that you do? Just tell me. Because my cousin is here. My cousin will tell you if I find an action step, I'm going to take it.
Okay.
Oh, that's for damn sure. There's been times that I told her that there's no way you're going to be able to get your second son back. I said, it's not going to happen. I told her over and over, it's not going to happen. Next thing I know, she got the kid back. She did everything unconventional. Even I said, to work. She did it. She was able to get the second son back.
Listen, we're addressing the issue here of how do we get it into federal court? This is how. Okay, if you have an open case, you file for the jurisdiction change, you answer the constitutional questions, and they kick it back to lower court. The lower court then has to abide by the decisions of the federal court, and it depends on how you ask the questions. On what
are you talking about filing a writ?
So she's asking
what specifically is the petition or the motion that you're filing in federal court?
Let me turn this over to Darren. Darren, what is the procedure to do this? If you have an open case and then you want to file a federal, how do we go about this?
Well, you have to lose. You have to lose first. You have to lose a hearing at your district level. And then you would go to the federal court, and then you file in the federal court that you want a ruling because there's nothing else that you can challenge. Or you're not filing an appeal. You got to lose a decision of some sort of manner, like Gunner's saying. You got to lose based on something. And that question of whether it's constitutional or whatever, you need to go to the next court. So you'll go to the federal court and you'll say, listen, I want you guys to rule constitutionally on this issue. It's got to be made a constitutional argument.
Well, the difference between myself and some of you who are Native parents is that I am a custodial grandparent, but I have been denied the right to even intervene. So I am not recognized as a party in the dependency matter, even though I am the party. My daughter is not a party. I'm the person who has custody. So I haven't had an adverse judgment per se against myself to be able to appeal because I haven't been admitted as a party. What I did in that case was I filed, I can't even file an interlocutory appeal because I've been denied my status as a party. What I did file was a petition for permission to appeal, and it was just flopped around and has never even been heard. So my case is somewhat different than some of you who are parents who've been able to maybe get a denial.
Does that make sense? Is, but it kind of isn't, because you still have to get past certain markers and things that have to be done, and a lot of it does go back to your state rights of where your state is in the jurisdiction of it that you have to follow under. There's a lot of jurisdictional issues that comes down to that.
Watch this, guys. Here we go. After this, we're going to do last thoughts, but check this video out. There we go.
We just need too much information.
All right, guys. Did you know to get a case removed from state to federal court, the procedure is you want to go to the state court where your case is pending. You want to get a certified copy of the criminal complaint. All it is the piece of paper with your name on it and the state's name, the state versus you. Get it certified from the clerk. It's like $5, I guess, something like right around there. You're going to get that certified copy. You're going to take it back to the federal court. You're going to get a notice of removal. You can print off the internet for Title 28. Use code 1441. Also, make sure you have in there Title 1446, Part D, which states that once the case is removed from state to federal court, the states will act no further up until the case is remanded, and so the state court immediately loses jurisdiction. And this is not a motion. You're not asking them. It's an automatic thing. And so again, you get that paperwork from the state court, get it certified, bring it back to the federal court, get your notice of removal, folks, with a civil complaint form and a civil cover sheet. And you're gonna make sure you get all the paperwork that you have from the state court and bring it to the federal court and hand it in. Again, get all the information you have from the state court and bring it with you to the federal court. Hand it all in one big packet, guys. And then you should get your case number, and then you go back and notify the state the case has been removed. You must serve the clerk, the judge, and the prosecutor, and the state no longer has jurisdiction after that, guys. You make sure you follow up with that. It's not a request; it's a matter of law. It's a fact of law. The state doesn't like it, but too bad. Again, guys, did you know that's the procedure for using the procedure for moving a case from state to federal court, guys? Stay in the fight. We'll go live later tonight. God bless you guys.
All right. That's that. And on that thought, let's do some last thoughts. Fowler, last thoughts?
My last thoughts are, before the Most High, Mother and Father God creative forces, I pray for each and every one of you, for all of the parents near and far, for all of our children near and far. I speak words of love, protection, guidance, and comfort over our children. I speak words of love and protection for the people who are handling our children, to handle them with kindness and care in our absence. And I pray for each one of us that we find the sweet relief that we have never found when we are in agony with our children apart. And I pray for us to find the solution and the remedies on earth before the Most High to bring our children home, and that they be well. Amen. Those are my closing thoughts.
All right. Herbert?
My closing thoughts are, stop arguing with the police and CPS at your door. Ask them one question. Do you have paperwork signed by a judge to do a wellness check or whatever? If CPS says, oh, no, we don't have it, that's it. Have a nice day. Close the door. Don't argue with them. Don't argue with the police. You're not going to get anywhere. You can get rid of CPS from your door within 10 seconds. Show me the paper. They can't show it? Have a nice day. Close the door. Because they're trained to try to talk their ways in. They're trained to talk to you, to try to get you to let them in just for that second. Let me see the kid. No. Don't argue. Just close the door. That's my last words. Oh, by the way, just by saying that, I can't arrest you. There is no law. You didn't break any law by saying that I'm not letting you in my house. You didn't break a law. You didn't break a law. There's nothing to arrest you for. So don't be afraid of that. Just close the door.
All right. Gunner, last thoughts?
Piss them off, dump the truth on them, walk away, and tell them fuck off. Bottom line, half of this bullshit, and understand this. You may have defeated us for a certain period of time or caught us off guard, or we a little bit uneducated, but the beautiful thing about being autodidact and being a true American, we understand we're the underdog. We were trained to be the underdog just in nature. We're coming back. But when we come back, understand this, it ain't going to be a question of whether or not we're going to let some of you get by or slide. We're going to hold every single one of you domestic terrorists accountable. And yes, I said domestic terrorists because you meet the definition under the FBI, domestic terrorism. You don't like it?
Hey, Gunnar, on top of that, I want to mention, you can curse at a police officer. That's not against the law.
Absolutely. It's called your freedom of speech, baby.
No, but a lot of people don't know that, Gunnar. And I'm telling you, you can curse at a police officer, and he cannot arrest you for that.
Nope. I got a medical condition. What? I can't see my ass taking and being nice to you. Sorry.
You don't have to go. See, you're doing an explanation. You don't have to explain anything. You could just say F off, have a nice day.
Hey, Herbert, have a nice day. Vinny, last words.
Is that up there?
Well.
Come on, Vinny, pump it up, baby.
I just want to give a big shout out to everyone. Thanks for the good thoughts and the good vibes. You know, it was definitely a good day in court.
When I was in the fucking bathroom.
So,
probably.
With that said, don't give up fighting. Keep fighting, even if you're facing criminal stuff. You gotta look through your case. You gotta go through everything. Go back to the dates when they arrested you. Go back to the dates when they prosecuted you. Put all that into one big file and start highlighting every part of it. It does help.
Collect evidence, people. You're in that process. One more. How about Sharon? Yeah. Sharon will get a last word. It's her first time.
Hey, Sharon, let's go. Sharon, go for it.
My last words are, if you've lost your children or your grandchildren, it is not your fault. and you still matter. So do something nice for yourself. Love yourself. Take some time to breathe.
Shout out to Sam on that one there.
Yes.
You think, Sam?
Sam is my healing buddy. She's over there in the comments. She's got a great TikTok
love
going
Sam
on.
here. Sam's the best. All right.
So take care of yourself. You're important.
Yes,
I need you to survive.
Sorry about that, Sharon. I didn't mean to cut you out. My bad.
Nah, you're
Here's
fine.
what I gotta say. Listen, this show is our opinions and our opinions only. Do whatever you got to do in this fight. You don't have to listen to us. You don't have to follow us. You don't have to do whatever. We're just trying to help everybody out through this fight. It's our opinions, and that's it. We're not going to get into arguments with anybody. We're not going to get into pissing matches.
Nope.
You know, you do what you got to do. This is your kids, and nobody's going to be able to do it better than you do it. So that's it. I'm the CPS Punisher. We're all out of here. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night. Thanks, Darren.
Benny, you doing after show host or what are we doing?
Yeah, you can set it up. You got it. We'll be there.
Hello? Darren?
Getting crazy, baby, chill. Don't medicate, just meditate. You waking up now, well, baby, you hella late. Educate, look at what's going on, let it resonate, accelerate. Find your inner hunger like you never ate. Agenda is to push the hate, separate and segregate. Don't celebrate quite yet, the storm is coming through for heaven's sake. Violence that they demonstrate, instigate and penetrate. The values of our country and our God is what they desecrate. My fighters ain't no featherweight, pulling out the seams of the fabric that they fabricate. They feed us lies, manipulate, intimidate through fear and force, forcing us to sit and wait till we come together, congregate, and then we liberate. Praying that you give me strength to find some love amongst the hate. Marching on these streets of blood till I see the golden gates. Troubadour and troubled souls, one of God's servants. Blades out, cut the grass till we see the serpents.
One day I hope you see the truth. This puppet show stays on because of you fools. We've been dancing with the devil way too long. I know it's fun, but get ready to pay your dues. Oh God, come back home. This crazy world is filled with liars and abusers. We need you now before we're too far gone. I hope one day they finally see the truth. God, we need you now.
I know the truth is hard to swallow, just digest it. Suspected something's going on, but chose to just neglect it. Deflected by some breaking news, or we just accept it. Expected just to fall in line and follow their perspective. Don't question their objective, but I got a lot of questions. How these kids molested, but nobody's been arrested. Read it in the testament, these children are protected. So I'm fighting all these terrorists, both foreign and domestic. Refuse to be directed, lying not a sheep. Only kneel to my God, so I'm dying on my feet. Silence when we speak, but there's violence in the street. I've been rolling with the punches, I can't take it on the cheek. Drink from a glass half full, I'm optimistic. People are sadistic, so vicious and malicious. Praying for assistance to overcome opposition, or I'm gonna start resisting and then I'll pray for forgiveness.
One day I hope you see the truth. This puppet show stays on because of you fools. We've been dancing with the devil way too long. I know it's fun, but get ready to pay your dues. Oh God, come back home. This crazy world is filled with liars and abusers. We need you now before we're too far gone. on because of you fools. We've been dancing with the devil way too long. I know it's fun, but get ready to pay your dues. Oh God, come back home. This crazy world is filled with liars and abusers. We need you now before we're too far gone. I hope one day they finally see the truth.